In this video, I want to take you through my 5 stages of absolute freedom. And we're going to go as in-depth as I possibly can. I've even got the iPad with me today, so we can go just that little bit deeper. I've tried my best to make this board look somewhat coherent, but as you can see, I started failing towards the end, and we'll just have to bear with and see what happens, okay? But we've got the 5 stages of absolute freedom. And this is what I've noticed from my own personal journey, done thousands of hours of meditation and shadow work and hypnotherapy, and also just doing hundreds and hundreds of calls with clients and watching them go through similar journeys over months and even years, okay? Now, what I want to make clear is what's the criteria? What does absolute freedom actually mean? Like, why do we care? And the way I view absolute freedom, because really freedom was a big driver for me. That's why I'm focusing on it a lot, right? I want it to be free, both externally, but also internally. And that's the number one criteria, right? You know, my first initial desire was I want to build a business that's online so I can live anywhere and I can make money and I can be free. And that's the external freedom. And you don't have to do it the way I did it, right? And that's just totally up to you, but it is about having the resources and external freedom to actually do what you want and be at capacity where you do have freedom there. And that's important. And I want to make this model truly within the integral idea of including everything. And so while, you know, my work is focused on the internal, the external is still very important, right? We don't need to neglect it. We don't need to put it away, but it's very much part of the picture of absolute freedom, okay? And so the criteria is external and internal freedom, freedom in the body, in the mind, and the heart, integration with all of them, right? We're not discounting our thinking, we're not discounting our feeling, we're allowing all of them to come together in unity. This isn't a meditation where we go, that's bad, I'm stopping my thinking, or where we repress feelings. It's about unification of all of it. Freedom in the body, freedom in the mind, freedom in the heart, right? Feeling that spaciousness throughout all of it. That's what it's all about. And the final criteria is 24/7. You know, when you wake up, are you experiencing this, or do you have to always do a practice to get there, right? Do you feel great after your meditation in the morning, but then, you know, it's 3 p.m. on a Tuesday and Jody comes in and you get triggered and angry and you lose that sense of spaciousness and freedom and being yourself, right? That's not what we want. We want to be really robust. And that doesn't mean we can't be triggered. It doesn't mean that we're, you know, never making a mistake or losing the experience. But we are really trying to make this a permanent and lasting transformation instead of something that is reliant on you doing something to get there. Okay. Now, just quickly, who am I? Why should you care? So my story starts with me wanting to get that external freedom. So I built a business, it actually did really well, but then I just started sabotaging it, right? I started getting in my own way because deep down it felt like it was too much. You know, it felt like I'm making all this money and I got anxious because of it. And so I started avoiding the things that had worked and still working all day, but doing it on things that just weren't even making a difference. And so the business just started to decline, you know, until there was nothing left of it. But from that place, I got a remarkable opportunity to go and live with a Buddhist nun and to learn from her and her lineage. She was 73, a senior Buddhist nun, amazing woman. I've spoken about her in great length, so I'm not going to go too in depth now, but she was a really incredible mentor, and she really gave me that Eastern perspective, right? The real meditation lineage perspective. And then I combined that with mentors who are hypnotherapists and shadow workers to get more of this unified perspective of Western and Eastern, and using the beauty of both to create real lasting change. Because the Eastern meditation style is amazing at bringing up states, right? And getting insight from state experience. But the Western style is so great, if you do it right with shadow work and hypnotherapy, at breaking the old constructs and allowing states to arise organically. And when you do both, and you can utilize both, you can get a really unified, powerful experience that really does equate, in my opinion, to absolute freedom. And then since then, I've been working with hundreds and hundreds of people, really, mostly entrepreneurs and people in sales, but also a few outliers beyond that. And I've just had the pleasure of watching them grow, the pleasure of watching them go through this and seeing an emergent stages come through, right? Seeing an emergent idea of what absolute freedom can mean at different stages, right? Now, this is still a work in progress. This is something I'm trying to develop and explore and see in clients and see where it maps. But I think it's a really nice way of understanding the journey and can give some hope when sometimes we're in one of these stages and it can feel like, are we going to be there forever? Especially number 3, which is the meaningless trap, which we're going to talk about in real depth. When you're there, it really feels permanent. And it's actually really a challenge. You know, I've got a few clients that are in that stage and just reminding them that it's just a stage, and there's a lot of hope, and it's going to get even better, because it can feel really quite challenging, right, in that stage. But it does end, and this is a way of showing what it can look like, of showing what the breakthroughs can look like, and giving you a little map, not to trap you in, not to say that this is going to be your experience, but to give you hope when the path can, the path can be a little bit scary or dark at times. So, without further ado, let's talk about the first stage, which I view as trapped. And this is where most clients come to me, and it's where they're external, their resources is in a good place. They have external freedom, but internally they feel trapped. Internally they feel stressed, anxious. They have what some people might call golden handcuffs, right? They're doing amazing externally, but it doesn't really feel like it. Yet, they would be crazy to let it go. They would be crazy to throw it all away because they are really successful. And so, when you're at this stage, it's wonderful because you've done half of it, right? You've got external freedom, and that is not something to diminish. It's really important, and you should be celebrated for that, and absolutely. But then we're noticing that there is an internal trappedness, that we haven't got absolute freedom. We're still trapped in a way. And so at this stage, people are often stuck in Slack or on their calendar, and they find it really difficult to actually have time for themselves on an external level, but also internally, they might feel a real tension in their heart, in their body. They might feel a tension in their mind, in their head. And life just feels like being in a cage. Even when they have the resources, life can still feel like being in a cage. And so the first stage, 1 to 2, is about removing the shackles. And this is when we break through those first few constructs, where we remove the stress, we remove the pressure, we remove the anxiety. And it's such a wonderful liberation. It's truly so wonderful. Because what tends to happen is they start to meet themselves again. And they start to really feel that spaciousness in their body. And often they get to enjoy the external freedom that they've actually achieved, instead of feeling like there's a mismatch, right? They get to actually feel liberated truly and have it all, because the stress, the pressure, and the anxiousness is gone, and the stories that created them is gone, right? Because the way we do this process is we want to find what's the story, the construct, but generating these negative symptoms like pressure, stress, feeling trapped. And so when we find those stories and we break the stories, then what happens is the natural liberation emerges, and the stress, pressure, and anxiousness, or whatever the negative symptom was, it just drops away. And so this is such a beautiful stage, and it's such a high when we go through this together, because life, it's like sometimes in one we just feel like that's how life is, and often when we're in challenging stages we're just going to feel that's just how life is. We have the same thing at 3. But when we break through, it's like, oh wow, there is a version of reality that I wasn't fully aware of. Okay, so now we move on to stage 3. And stage 3 is a really interesting stage, and it doesn't seem to happen for everyone, at least in the same way. And it's called the meaningless trap. And what's really important about the meaningless trap is it's a new creation by the mind, but we think that this is what liberation is meant to feel like. Okay, so let me explain what that means. Often when we remove the shackles, right, we've removed the stress, pressure, anxiety, and the meanings that created them, the stories that created them, we get this sense of spaciousness and freedom. Sometimes the mind can be a little bit challenged by that. And so instead of just enjoying the spaciousness and the freedom and just letting what wants to emerge, it starts labeling it and going, oh, life is meaningless, life is pointless. And so from these new stories that emerge, often we can generate experience of flatness, neutrality, an experience of pointlessness, emptiness, right? Emptiness in a negative sense in this way, rather than the absolute emptiness in Buddhist philosophy, which is beautiful. And so we experience all of this and we think, oh, it's because of the inner work. And there's an actual truth to it. Often we wouldn't have got to this stage if we didn't do the inner work, but it's not that inner work creates meaninglessness. It's just that the mind with the new space that's here, with the new freedom that's here, doesn't know how to be with it, so it generates new stories and it creates meaninglessness, right? And the thing to really understand with this stage is that the meaninglessness isn't being seen, it's being generated, okay? We're not seeing that life is meaningless. We're seeing space. We're just experiencing, oh, there's a real spaciousness here. There's a real freedom here, liberation. And then we're labeling that's meaningless. That's pointless, that's this, that's that. And the moment we label it, it takes on a new tone. Because if something's meaningless, it's like, oh, what's the point? You feel flat, you don't care. Oh, it's meaningless, why do I care? Right? And so life becomes that. It becomes very grey. And so this is a really challenging stage because a lot of people don't realize they're in it. And they don't realize that it's a symptom that's being generated by them. Number one is kind of obvious, right? I'm feeling stress, anxiety, pressure. It's not fun. It's a very negative symptom, right? But it's super obvious. So when you come to me, you may have worries like, is it going to work? This kind of thing, but you're not doubting that it's a symptom, right? You're not doubting that it's a problem. You're kind of aware that the anxiety, stress, and pressure is kind of a pain in the ass, right? But when we get to number 3, it's like, oh, maybe I'm just seeing what reality is, right? This is just how reality is. And it's like, yeah, okay. What if it isn't? What if we're generating? No, this is how reality is. Okay, all right. What if we're generating? No, this is how reality is. I'm just seeing reality. And so at this stage, it's just piercing through that, right? It's actually not a very difficult stage in many ways. It's just difficult because the mind gets trapped in thinking that this is them seeing, like seeing truthfully, when reality is more of being generated. Okay, it's generating more stories. And so when we see that and we pierce through that in the same way we pierced through the pressure, stress, anxiety, the internal trappedness of the beginning, we pierce through the meaninglessness, the stories that are being generated. We question them, we break them. And then what returns is the same liberation, right? The same freedom from 2, but often more of a even deeper fullness as well. And this is just the best thing, is just because it's it's a return to who we are, right? It's a return to really the fullness and aliveness that I think we all really want at the end of the day. And that's a big part of freedom. Absolute freedom isn't just sitting in peace. That's a wonderful aspect of it. But it's truly being alive within it, being full within it, experiencing the absoluteness of life, right? That's real freedom, in my opinion. That's what it's all about. And being able to experience the color of life. And that emerges when we break through the meaningless trap. And we actually start to see that we're just generating those stories. We're just generating the grayness, the flatness, all of that. And because we're generating it, we can allow it to drop away. And we can break the stories and we can pierce through it. And we can see the aliveness and fullness underneath. And we just get to experience that and enjoy it and get back into life again, get back into living instead of feeling like I don't want to get out of bed and life is pointless and I don't care. We get to go back to living and we have purpose again and we have fulfillment again. It's just really great when we go through that. It's awesome to see with clients. And we get to number 4. And so number 5 and 4 are both really interesting. But number 4, I see it as bring it home, right? Because kind of when we go on from number 1, it's that hero's journey story, right? We're the hero, there's this call to adventure, and we don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes we resist it. We say, no, I'm just going to carry on doing my external stuff, and I'm just going to carry on building the business, and I'm going to ignore it, until eventually we can't ignore it. And eventually we go on that journey. And we embark into the unknown. And then we experience a little bit of success. Right? We go into our own shadow, our own dragon's lair, and we start getting the treasure. Right? And then we meet a new dragon, the meaningless trap, and we find even more treasure. Right? We go on that journey, we embark into our shadow, we embark into our demons and our dragons. And we slay them, right? And we find the treasure of a richness within us underneath. And when we find that richness and that treasure, it's just so wonderful. Because we're just seeing who we are. The most beautiful states you ever experience. And they're just you. You didn't have to go and do some retreat for them. They're just you. They're just there. Because that's who you are. And then it's about, we're not going to leave that treasure in the lair. We're going to bring it home. And so we've gone on that journey and we've left our home, we've left the comfort of the external world. But now, how do we bring it back? Right? How do we go from all this treasure inside to living it in our daily lives? Maybe when we're running businesses, or doing sales, or having relationships, loving relationships, or family relationships, or friendships. How do we bring that deep power and treasure with us, that fullness, that peace, that aliveness, whatever the treasures that came up organically for us, how do we bring them back? And that's stage 4. And we're really just going to the next level here, because this is where we start to get to that external, internal, right? We're really, truly bringing them together. Because not only does this free up our internal, but it actually frees up our external even more. Often we're able to show up in the world with even more of our power and capacity when we do this, and we truly bring it home at stage 4. But not only that, we're able to experience the fullness of life. We're able to watch our external be enjoyable, playful, fun. A place where we just get to enjoy it like we were when we were children at times, but with the wisdom of being adults. So that's what stage 4 is really all about. right? Allowing in many ways the internal, external barrier to dissolve. Allowing this to become the 24/7 experience, right? Not just something that when you're going in, you're doing the deep work, you feel kind of good, you feel nice, but bringing it back and making this every single day, Monday to Friday, to Saturday to Sunday. This is the experience. This is how you show up. And this is the life you get to live it for, right? And then we move on to number 5. And this, in many ways, you can't see it because I'm terrible at drawing and missed this. It should be going more up here, like just exponential growth, but I couldn't do that, so I had to do it like this. And 5 is expansive bliss. And really 5 is building on number 4. It's building on the full integration of external, internal. But it's also building on the integration of body, mind, and heart, right? Allowing every single part of our consciousness to be involved so that we're not walking through life fighting ourselves or in a battle. And when those barriers dissolve between body, mind, heart, external, internal, even barriers sometimes around time can dissolve at this stage. And it's just an absolute expansion from all of that. This one's a little harder to articulate because it's, in more ways, it feels more spiritual at this stage. Everything else is very in the world at this point, but this stage, it's kind of like a lot of things dissolve. And it's just playing with that and playing with that expansion of self and dissolving the barriers of who we believe we are. And it's just a really fun one. And in many ways, 5 is this everlasting stage of absolute expansive bliss. And it's kind of expanding this way, but it's also expanding inwards too. And there's just a dissolving of what internal and external means for us. And we're just finding even more of our power. And in many ways, we're going through this again, finding even more of our power, just again and again and again, finding more treasure, breaking through more constructs, and sitting with the light that's there, with just so much joy and passion, and our own self and who we really are. And that's absolute freedom, in my opinion. I think that fits the criteria. We have the breakthrough of freedom externally and internally, and in many ways dropping that barrier. Body, mind, heart, absolutely. At this point, it's very much 24/7. It's exactly what life is. There's no break from it, right? We make it triggered at times, but that's just an opportunity to bring in more of our own richness, because we can just go back into the lab, bring it home, and come through. And so this is very much a 1 to 5 phases or stages, but at 4 and 5, we're still using 1, 2, and 3. We're still, pardon me, noticing where we're trapped and bringing it back, and breaking the constructs and finding the light underneath. And it's just ever expansion, right? Ever exploration of what our capacity can be, both in removing who we thought we were and also what we thought we could be, right? What we thought we could do in life. And so I hope that's articulate and useful. I think number 1 to 4 is definitely useful. 5 is a little bit more. It's something I want to include because I think it's important, but it's also definitely a little bit more. It's harder to put words to, I would say. Yeah, so if you have any questions, comments, just write them down below. If you feel that this really resonates with you and you might want to take it to the next level, I do have a Calendly link in the description, and should be in the comments too, where you can book time with me and we can just chat through and see what my next steps might look like for you. But for now, my friends, have a beautiful day.